and the other guys in the Nexus team.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the NAP, I think that when you were describing the NAP, I think that you absolutely did it in the correct way. You know, the non-aggression principle means that you don't have the rights to aggress upon another person. The whole idea that you're simply just gonna be able to just go and buy a nuke off the street like it's like a piece of chocolate or anything like that. That's obviously
The other
ridiculous
guys in the
because your
Nexus
average
team.
person isn't
Yes,
going to
absolutely.
have the excess capital
I
in order
think
to
that
buy a
when
nuke
you were
or
describing
even
the
have the know-how to even launch a nuke or even do something with that. So I feel like that's such an insane hypothetical that I hear a lot of people bring up towards me. But the thing is, I didn't mention anything about weapons of mass destruction during this whole conversation. All I mentioned was I don't believe it's the right of the government to restrict your weapons. Also, another thing, the whole idea that everybody, what you said, like 90% of people from this group believes that we should do this, that we should do that. To me, that doesn't really matter to me because in the end of the day, simply because 90% of people think that it's okay to violate my rights, to me, it does not make it okay for a person to violate my rights. As long as I'm not aggressing upon another individual with my weapon, simply because somebody is afraid of it or somebody votes to take away my weapon, that doesn't I don't think that constitutes any reason to take away my property rights because I would argue that would justify essentially violating pretty much any other right that you could think of. So yeah, I don't really think that's a really good idea. Also, simply in the end of the day, and if you could make a consequentialist argument, but as long as the NAP is true in the end of the day is because when you get yourself a piece of property, that thing is yours. It belongs to you. And if somebody else takes that piece of property from you, it's an aggression. As you're not using that piece of property in order to aggress upon another person, I could see no real justification in order to take that piece of property from that other person.
Is it our turn to speak now?
Yeah,
well, I've got
go
a
ahead.
response I want to get, but I'm cool with throwing it over to you afterwards. And Alex, is that
Okay,
cool?
cool. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
I just want to run through some of the things that Seth has said really fast. Oh, are we allowed to do
Oh,
that?
wait, no. It's supposed to be if Skyhill wants to offer another rebuttal or Kurapika.
I mean, I'll go.
Okay, yeah, let Skyhill go because
So,
Nexus has time left for their time rebuttal.
How much time do I have?
You have oh no, my best friend's gone.
I was unable to argue every point.
4 minutes, yeah. 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. Yeah. First.
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest. I don't really give a shit about the philosophical justifications at all. I came here to argue on data. So the idea. Okay, so this is what a lot of people like to do with studies on this issue. Is they do this crude method of vote count, where they take X number of studies comes to this conclusion on this policy. Y number of studies comes to this conclusion on this policy. But they don't actually consider the characteristics of each individual study. I don't know how many studies Synth has that he will cite in support of his view, because however many he has, I could play the same game and just do this crude vote counting bullshit. But I find it much more informative to look at methodology. And even before we look at methodology of studies estimating that effect, we should consider characteristics of CCW holders. Okay, so if it's going to be the case that we pass a state policy that's going to allow people to get weapons permits, then it follows that if we have an increase in crime subsequent to that, it would be from CCW holders. But that doesn't follow, because CCW holders are actually quite pacifistic. They commit very little crime on their own. In fact, at rates lower than the general population. So that's just a pretty easy smackdown to the whole argument that CCW laws are going to allow people to become more violent, or rather, going to increase aggregate levels of violence. I mean, it doesn't follow.
Okay, there is 2 minutes.
And I can put all my shit in the chat. I mean, several states collect data on this year by year.
Sorry.
Like, for example, the states that do this: Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas. I mean, Utah. They all do this. So, I mean, there are. I mean, you're gonna have to do better than saying X study shows Y result because it has good methodology. I mean, that's very non-specific. I mean, if you're just gonna claim if you're gonna claim that your conclusion is correct because you have studies to support it, you have to go beyond simple vote counting because they can just play the same game with you. You understand? Like, what I got like 20 here that come to the opposite conclusion as you. I mean, and we also have evidence that some of those studies that you talk about, maybe not those in particular, but some that come to such types of conclusions are p-hacked. So, yeah.
All right, you guys have 1 minute and 20 seconds left. Nexus.
If I were to, oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was saying you're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. If just one last statement that I was gonna make. Even if I don't really care about any study that you could show me that says, oh, if you allow a person to own a weapon, it's gonna increase in this amount of gun violence, that amount of gun violence. At the end of the day, none of that really matters to me. To me, it's about figuring out a solution to this issue without actually violating another person's rights. So if we're going to figure out how to lower gun crime, can we if completely impossible to figure out a way to deal with that issue without going into everybody and forcing them to register their weapon or basically have the government come in and restrict people from their on their right to own a weapon. Absolutely, I think there's plenty of avenues in which we could take in order to not violate people's rights. And also, at the end of the day, if another person decides to take their weapon and violate another person's right with that weapon, that's still going to be illegal. The only thing that's not going to be illegal is simply owning a weapon. And that's it.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Now it is Atlas's turn for their time rebuttal. I'll start the timer. It's going to be 7 minutes. I'll start the timer once one of you guys starts speaking.
Sure. All right. So I'll go through the side arguments first. We can just do votes counts with studies, and that's bad. Well, nobody invoked study numeracy, but the net number of studies obviously showed, as recorded by systemic reviews in the subject, a preponderance of evidence is extremely lopsided on our side. So if you want to go look at if we do the process like I just named the example studies and then you just named the example studies, obviously in the course of a 41-minute debate, we could never name all the studies on either subject, so it'd be very easy to continue to name more. Instead of doing that, we should just look at systemic reviews that go over the preponderance of evidence, go over the collection of evidence that we currently have, and then we can deduct from those. But you also made some arguments that seem like they're just non-responsive. I told you the methodology. I didn't just say it was the case that has a good one. I told you what kind of good methodology it has. In the case of the Donahue study, it has just the synthetic controls, and in the case of the Shell et al. Study, that one ends up having the methodology is called. Well, give me a second here. I'm blanking on the name. The methodology in that one ends up being Bayesian, just normal Bayesian analysis. So those both have like completely fine methodology, and if you want, you can go take a look at those studies yourself. I'll link them to you if you'd like, but obviously doing a review of studies you haven't seen before might be kind of difficult on the fly. You said some studies are p-hacked. Maybe not yours, but some are. Yeah, I agree. Some studies are p-hacked, right? Maybe not yours, but some are as well, right? We can make the same argument on both sides. It provides you no evidence for your point. But to go through Sithis' arguments really fast, and hopefully I'll throw it over to NLX. Sithis says, but you can't just go and buy a nuke like it's a piece of chocolate. The average person can't afford it. That's true. The average person can't, but nothing about what we were talking about has specifically to do with the average person. If a rare person is able to afford it, like for example, Kanye West used to be a billionaire at one point in time. If that individual had nuclear weapons, obviously that'd be very bad. You said, I didn't mention WMDs. I just said the government has no rights to restrict your weapons. Well, the W in WMD stands for weapon. So if you said you can't own a weapon if it's this type of weapon, obviously that would be what's called a restriction. That's the word for that. You said it doesn't matter to me what most people think, which seems to just miss the argument. I'm not telling you it's the case that if most people think it, then it's correct. What I'm telling you instead is just that if most people think this, right, if they don't think your assumption's correct, you need to forward an argument for your assumption, not just assume it. Right? Nobody else is going to assume that. It just begs the question in favor of your view, and so we'll deny it. Right? It's not the case the NAP is true. The argument you gave for the NAP was if you buy a piece of property, that's yours. Well, that's obviously not going to be an argument you want to hold to. So, for example, some people buy dogs. You would say that dog is their property. It's not okay to rape that dog, though. So just because a piece of property is yours doesn't mean we're okay with you doing whatever you want to it. So obviously that's not going to work as an argument for the NAP because it's just clearly false. Once again, it just begs the question in favor of the NAP, and any normal person would reject it. So if you have some kind of argument to forward in favor of the NAP, you should build it off of assumptions that either the other person's going to grant or that you have incredibly strong arguments for. If you don't, we're just going to dismiss it. NLX, you had things you wanted to say as well.
Yeah, so we were talking about people being able to purchase firearms. I know there's a relation made with nuclear weapons, but personally I would like to stay away from those analogies. Currently, and if you look at some DOJ studies on this, 90% of people who are in prison, both federal and state, get their weapons that are from non-retail sources. And there's currently loopholes to those laws that require that you go through a background check, that you require, people to go through a retail source. I think this was something that wasn't really talked about. There was a lot of talk about the NAP, but I think I wanted to hit the property rights a little bit more. If you have those property rights, you can sell to whoever you like. Is that correct? It's just yes or no.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is straw purchases that I think the United States should pass legislation towards at least closing up. One, because a lot of these weapons that are used in crime are, bought under these loophole sort of standards, like the straw purchases, for example. I'm just wondering, would you be willing to close that down? Require that all straw purchases have, background checks?
No.
Why is that?
Because
just to
it's
be
not the
clear,
government's right to check who you are. It's not like, why should the government force somebody to check who you are before they sell you a gun? If
Yeah.
somebody wants to sell you a gun, it's their choice.
just to be clear, this is your Alex, this is your timer, but you can't necessarily
He asked me a
cross-examine.
question.
No, I know, I
He asked-
understand that. I
sorry.
understand, but Alex,
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
supposed to cross-examine. Yeah, this is
Oh,
just
okay,
a time
gotcha.
rebuttal. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think we should pass laws that, close these sorts of loopholes down, and because, all the prisoners that are using firearms in crimes are getting it from these illegal sources. I wouldn't say legal sources, but loophole sources, such as straw purchases. And I can also link the study to that as well.
Do we still have more time on the clock?
Yes, you have 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, Quach, let me know if you want to jump in here. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. So, Sith, I mean, this is not CX, but Sithis, I just want to quick yes or no to this question here. Do you think it's the case that people should be legally able to own nukes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the reductio applies, right? So, do you think that
Mhm.
Kanye West should have been able to own a nuke?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to be clear,
The thing is, as long as he purchased it from a willing participant,
If you buy a dog, is the dog yours?
yes.
Should you be able to have sex with your dog?
Seth, hold on. The thing is, we can't necessarily cross-examine yet. This is just a time rebuttal. Yeah.
Oh, do we have a CX section? Oh, the answer is yes. You should be able to have sex with your dog.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can't
I
necessarily
don't think you
cross-examine yet.
should, but an animal. I mean, we allow
No
people to
law
kill
should be
dogs.
passed preventing
Hold
it.
on, guys,
No.
come on. It's only time rebuttal. You can't cross-examine. I don't want to repeat myself. Yeah, you guys have one. Yeah, Coach, you want to go ahead? Yeah, Coach, go ahead.
No, I don't want to go ahead because I can't. I can't do things with a
I mean, we could go back
proposal.
and forth. That's fine.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so since
That's what I want to do.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So I think since the time rebuttal has been over, since you guys are getting really horny, we could just move into the cross-examination, open discussion back and forth. We can just pick it out with Synth and Sithis, that cross-exam. Okay.
Yeah, Sithis, the question was just, should we be able to pass laws that you can't rape your dog?
Well, the thing is, it depends.
Uh-oh.
Let's say you're on somebody else's private property, or you're in a company town in which.
No, you're in your basement.
Oh, when you're in your own basement, you're on your own
Yep.
private property. Did you purchase a dog from another willing participant?
Yep.
Yes.
I purchased from a dog breeder. So you should be able
Yeah,
to
why
rape
would
your
I
dog,
care?
including
Why would I
rape
care?
it, even if it's torturous, right? Even if you're torturing the dog.
Why would I care?
I'm just asking yes or no. Are you able to torture your
Yes.
dog?
Yeah. The answer is
Perfect,
yes.
perfect. So look, the argument, why should I care, right? The argument I'm going to give you is just I'm a utilitarian, so I'm going to just say you should care because it causes the dog suffering, right? You shouldn't cause the dog suffering. But if you ask the average person, do they care? They're going to say yes as well. So do you have some argument you can forward for why you ought not care?
Well, because I don't. At the end of the day, we murder dogs, we torture dogs, we eat dogs in certain countries. So I don't see it really being a step forward to have sex with a dog. Not saying that I think it's
that's just descriptive.
Not me personally thinking that I think that people should do that. I think that's fucking.
Look, that's
wild
just
if somebody
descriptive.
does
There was a
that.
point in time when we owned slaves. It doesn't mean that it's okay to own slaves. So obviously this is
Yeah,
just
but the
a
thing
fallacy.
is, killing a dog or raping a dog isn't violating another individual's human rights. So for slavery, you're violating another person's human rights.
Yeah, exactly. The point is just that in the case of the argument you just made, it's fallacious, right? Saying there's this other reason why it's not the case and this argument applies doesn't help you at all, right? Either way, your argument's fallacious. Saying because people descriptively do something, therefore it's okay to do, that doesn't really give you an argument. Yeah, saying that descriptively people do act, therefore it's okay to do. Excuse me. Saying just because, well, I think it should be illegal to eat a dog. Yeah, of course. That's going to be tangential to the topic. The point that I'm making is just that you're arguing in favor of a position that almost every single person is going to reject, right? If you have an argument in favor of it, you should be able to forward it. Other than just the fallacious argument, people
Why should I
descriptively do
care?
this. Well, the
Yeah.
Why
point
would I
is
care?
the point is that
Appeal
you're
to
in a debate.
majority.
Not an appeal to
Yes,
majority,
I'm in a
right?
debate in which we express our views, and I'm expressing
Yeah, we
my
should be able to.
views.
Yeah, and yours is based on the assumption of the NAP, and you don't have an argument for it. You have an argument in favor of the
Well,
NAP for somebody who doesn't accept it. That's not going to beg the question.
Are you going to allow me to make my arguments, or are you just going to keep talking over me?
Please
So-
speed it up, dog. We don't have much time.
Is this a time to debate, or am I timed on when I'm on my responses? Or
No,
something?
the open discussion. It's up to you guys. It could be
Okay,
anywhere
so
from 5 to 10
I'm
to
allowed
20
to.
minutes.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah. You can
So,
cross-examine or yeah.
So, in the end of the day, do you believe that you own yourself?
No, I don't think you can own people.
You don't own yourself?
No, my concept of ownership and my notion of ownership don't apply to human beings.
So you don't own yourself?
I just answered this question. Are you going to ask the same question over and over again?
He's
it's a yes or
just
no
he's
question.
just
Yeah, you
getting
gotta- you gotta
he's
yes or no
just getting clarification. You don't need to
Yeah,
be
I'm just
hacking about
clarifying
it.
if it's a yes
There's
or
no
no.
There's no clarification. It's a yes or no question. I'm going to answer the same way I did the first time.
Well, let's
So,
be nice.
no.
Let's be nice.
That's
I don't understand why you're being so
maybe
hostile.
yeah,
to me.
maybe
I'm
Not being
being-
hostile, I'm telling you I've already
maybe
answered your
he's
question,
just
right? The
maybe
answer to your
he's just a
question
little
is,
bit
I don't think
confused.
I own myself because I don't
Maybe
think
he's
you
just
can
a
own
little
hold on.
confused.
Wait, hold
Just
on,
grant
hold on,
him some
hold on.
grace.
A lot of noises.
He's
A
just
lot of
getting
noises. A
clarification.
lot of noises. Hold on. All right. Since keep going. Just keep moving forward. Yeah.
No, I don't understand why you're so hostile to me. I just want to know if he
Yeah,
owns
no, so
himself
cut
or
the
not.
meta. I don't want to talk about meta discussion with you, just to respond to the argument. It's a waste of my time.
I mean, if you don't want to have a debate, you're more than welcome to leave.
Yeah, I'm willing to have a debate with you. I'm not willing to have a meta discussion with you. Just hurry up and respond to the argument.
If you're not willing to have this discussion, then you're more than welcome to leave.
Doug, I've already
I
had
mean,
the
that's-
discussion with you. I answered your question directly, right? Go ahead and respond to the
Okay.
argument.
So the thing is, so then who owns you?
I'm not owned.
So you don't have control. What does ownership imply?
Y'all ownership implies is like a legal right to be able to do whatever you want with some particular thing. I just don't believe in ownership. I'm an eliminativist on the view. So if you think my notion of ownership is going to tell that you can own people or something, I just don't think you can do that because I don't think you could sell yourself. So as long as you can't sell yourself, then obviously you can't own yourself.
So if I went up to a person and I signed a certificate saying that I want to work at a job for a certain amount of hours, basically sell myself to that company for a certain amount of
No,
hours.
I don't think
in
that is selling
exchange for
yourself.
money. No, that's not selling yourself?
No, that's selling your
You're
labor,
not-
right? They don't own you afterwards.
Well, you're doing it for a certain amount of time, right?
Do you lack self-ownership at work?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
But
cool. Then
they're-
you
but
concede that's
you're-
not going to be that's not going to be a counterexample. You don't even consider it the case that they own you, so you haven't sold yourself. You haven't
Well,
sold
what
yourself
you're
even
doing-
for that period. Not even
Well, you're
renting
selling.
yourself.
Let's
Damn, bro.
let's have Synthesis go and then Synth.
Damn, man, this is the type of way you guys conduct yourself on debates, huh? It seems.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the
So-
tone police.
All right, that's fine. So in the end of the day, I believe that like when you sell your labor, you're basically selling your body and your energy in order to in exchange for some sort of commodity or good or service. Don't you? And I would argue that if you have full control over yourself, I would argue that means that you have ownership over yourself. Like, would you disagree with that?
Yeah, of course I disagree with that. So my friend
Okay.
can, like loan me something, and it could be the case I don't have ownership over it, but for that period of time, they give me full control over doing whatever I want with it. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case of ownership. Ownership isn't just whenever you have control over something. For example, if I rent a house from somebody, I don't own the house. I don't even own it for that period of time. I just don't own it.
Well, the thing is, the person who is renting it to you is allowing you to use it, but in exchange for a certain amount of money, but they still own it because they have full control over it. Because if they at any point they say, "Hey, I want that thing back," you would be, what did you say? You would be obligated to give that person their thing back, right?
No, of course you don't. That'd be illegal. Obviously, if you rented the house if you give somebody like $1,000 up front, and they say like, I'm gonna give you this house for 2 months for $1,000, but assuming it's a very cheap house, 2 months for $1,000, they would be violating your rights, even on your view, if they were to kick you out, right? They'd be violating that contract. So no, they don't have full control over it while they're renting it to you.
Well, not necessarily. What they could do is they could give you back the money in which they rented because you and or what you could do is you could take them to court as for the amount of money that that they owe you. So
yeah, that
that
wouldn't
way-
look. The reason you're able to
So
take them
their
to court is because
property
they
is still
violated the contract.
theirs. Though, if simply because somebody
It's
is
still
renting
illegal.
your property, hold on. The argument isn't that. The argument is that simply because someone is renting your property doesn't make that theirs. You still own it. You're just renting it out to another person. At any
Yeah, you're not
point that you
tracking.
want it back, huh?
Look, you're not tracking the argument. I'm not telling you that it's the case that you like begin to own it if you're renting. I'm telling you that in the case of ownership, you sometimes don't have full control. The example of renting is the one that comes up, right? Renting is in a case where you don't have full control. It would be illegal to kick that person out if that person stayed there and shot you on your
I'm not
ethical
talking
view.
about illegal or legal.
It's also
I'm talking
morally
about-
it's also morally going to be equivalent. You want your laws to match your ethics. I'm telling you that in your case,
Mhm.
the ethical view that you suppose, right, the NAP, right, this particular ethical view would also say that if it's the case somebody rents property to you, and they give it a contract in advance that you get to use that thing for 2 months for $1,000, that individual will be violating your right by trying to kick you out, even though they own it.
Well, yes, but that would be because you
One more
signed the
quick
agreement.
thing. Seth, you
to-
can after you answer. I want the others to also join in on the discussion.
Yeah, so if I was gonna, I would argue that that's because you agree to allow that person to rent it, but that doesn't imply that the person who is renting it owns it. You still have control over that property.
That's the point.
It still belongs to you.
That's the point.
Yeah, but the thing is, you still own it.
That's the point.
All right,
Good.
let's move the discussion a little bit back. It got a little bit too much into the NAP, but that's fine. But the Sky Hub or NLX or Quich or Kurapika, do you guys want to offer anything? Try to move it back to the guns as well. Try to move it back to the guns.
I mean, I wanted
Okay.
to focus on some of the regulations in place and at least some of the loopholes that we should close down at least.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if Quaish, you want to say anything?
I'm not following like any of this ownership stuff. I have no idea what's going on.
I mean,
Okay,
if you
yeah,
want to
I
ask me
guess-
questions, if you want to bring forward questions about particular gun control things that you support, and then I could give you my opinion on it.
Okay. I definitely agree that we should at least have regulations that at least close down some loopholes when it comes to purchasing firearms, because I definitely think that one, there are individuals out there, felons who are not properly rehabilitated back into society, those who are mentally ill, who have shown that they're violent, a danger to themselves and others, that they shouldn't be able to get these firearms. And I definitely think that at least federal laws should at least close down these loopholes for private sales and transactions through, whatever there is, like straw purchases and whatnot. I'm just wondering, because we did have a brief discussion about this earlier.
Yeah. So what I would say to that. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
brief,
go ahead.
but why do you
Go.
disagree with at least closing down those loopholes, especially when we're proposing something that isn't even onerous on like law-abiding people who aren't felons, people who aren't mentally ill? This is just targeting a very like specific type of like people who, I think we can end up all agreeing that like shouldn't have firearms.
Oh, in the end of the day, I don't think when you talk about loopholes, I don't think there should be the law that is these people are loopholing in that is there in the first place. So if there's a law that is and there's somebody trying to find a loophole around it, well, I think we should probably just get rid of that law in the first place. Why are we restricting an individual from buying a weapon in the first place? As long as they bought it from another willing participant, I don't see any issue with that. Like, if I'm buying a gun and I'm selling it to another person, why should the government come to me and be like, hey, you should get a background check on that person, you should make sure that that person is a good person? It's like, that's not my problem. It's my property and I'm selling it to another individual. I don't
Well, the
I don't
government
really
has
care
a
what the-
well, the government has a vested interest in protecting its people, and if you sell guns to these people, like felons, those who are mentally ill, those who've shown that they're a danger to themselves and others,
that would still be
There-
illegal if a person
Mhm.
who are in any of those categories goes and then uses that weapon to commit a crime, that would still be illegal. But simply
Yeah,
because somebody
the crime
decides
itself
to
is
use
illegal.
simply because somebody decides, well, and I'm talking about an ANCAP society, of course.
I'm talking about like current
No,
day
I'm
regulations within the
telling you
United
what I
States.
believe. I'm telling you
Okay.
what I
Hold on,
believe. You know
inside
what I'm
voices,
saying?
inside
Yeah,
voices,
sorry.
inside
Yeah, I'm
voices.
telling you what. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be too loud. I wasn't trying to overtalk him or anything. I was just saying that, and I'm telling you what I believe under my system, and under my system there would be no gun restriction, and my justification towards that would be, at the end of the day, if somebody goes and uses that weapon to go and harm somebody else, that action is still illegal. But the action of me selling that gun to that other person isn't my fault. Simply because somebody else uses their weapon to do something illegal shouldn't restrict me from owning a weapon. I haven't hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm. I'm not arguing that those who are law-abiding should be blocked from owning guns. I think I'm arguing here is that so that we can mitigate future harms, we shouldn't be selling firearms to certain types of people. And I'm not looking at this through the lens of like an Ancapistan, for example, like you are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it through like today's reality, the current situation within, the United States. And I definitely think that we should at least have restrictions on who people get to sell weapons to. I don't think I'd be comfortable. And if I was, if I was the state, I would have a vested interest that meets intermediate scrutiny to at least, be able to pass legislation that, restricts straw purchasers or private purchasers from selling firearms to those who are, mentally ill, felons, people who are dangerous to themselves or others. And I definitely think this is good public policy, because if you look at the data, most like 90 to 95% of firearms that are used in crimes, whether possessed or used, are bought through this, this loophole, the straw purchase loophole, where there is no background check. The person that is selling doesn't need to conduct that background check to make sure that the person they're selling to is not one of those restricted types or restricted classes of people. And you make the argument that you should be able to sell, and I definitely agree with that. But I think that it depends on the person that you're selling to, because there is sort of risks and factors that you have to take into account.
Okay, so the thing is, when you look at most of the gun crime within the United
Can I
States.
sit this? Can I go?
Oh, I thought he was. That's fine.
Or unless,
I mean,
or, yeah,
I don't
well,
wanna talk
okay,
too much.
do you? Well, people are in the chat saying like, are we gonna have a debate? So, I mean, I was just gonna wait for y'all to completely finish, unless.
No, you're more than welcome to type in if you feel I'm talking too much.
Okay, well, I was just gonna add. I mean, do we even have our priors straight? Like, so there's two questions. First, we want to ask: does either total like per capita gun ownership rate, or the strength or lack thereof of gun legislation, or both, have a causal impact on aggregate violence? Right? Do we would all agree that that's like a relevant question to answer as a prior, right?
Well, Sithis shouldn't agree with that. That'd be a contradiction if he does.
Oh, I wasn't listening.
Wait, can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
We would agree, right, that per capita gun ownership, so the number of hands with number of guns in the hands of the civilian populace, or strength of gun legislation or lack thereof, would be a causal factor in determining aggregate violence rates, right?
I think per capita, I wouldn't argue that per capita gun ownership is like what's causing more gun violence, but I definitely think we should look at like specific policies and specific loopholes that we might be able to close down that would have a drastic impact on reducing gun violence. Much like the closing down the loophole for straw purchases and requiring people who are doing those private purchases to at least conduct some sort of background check, which they don't have to under current United States law. And I believe that's because of the loopholes created under the Gun Control Act of I think 1968.
So,
would you
wait, before you wait, sorry, Kurapika, do you want to go? Because I was going to follow up.
No, you can continue. It's fine.
Okay, so then, I mean, okay, then, to be clear, are we going to not contest first question? Like, is nobody going to contest that?
Contest the
What was
question.
the
I don't think a
question?
question can be false. Right? It's
Well,
just like your question was answered, you don't contest questions. You answer.
No, the idea that per capita gun ownership could influence aggregate violence levels, that was first question.
Yeah, of course. The answer is obviously that, but it's not going to matter really because we have controls for that. So the Donahue et al. Study and the synthetic controls they use, they also go over demographics and per capita gun ownership. So it wouldn't really help your argument at all.
Was that a right to carry study?
Yes.
Okay, why right to carry and not just per
Because
capita
the
gun
debate
ownership?
is over. Well, the debate is over whether or not it's the case that gun control is good, and that's a study over gun control legislation. Like if you have right to carry, then it's the case you have less gun control than if you don't have right to carry.
Okay, well the question. Okay, well again.
Well, I mean, the right to carry is.
Wait.
Oh,
Why
sorry.
does it have to be right to carry? Why can't we simply look at whether per capita gun ownership impacts violence levels or the strength of gun control laws as a whole? Why do we have to hyper-focus on right to carry?
You can look at any kind of other one as well. You can go ahead and look at specific gun laws, but the argument that you have to make is that it's the case that gun control is bad, not it's the case that gun control can be done poorly.
Well, I'm not arguing that it can be
sure.
done. I'm not arguing that it's done poorly. I'm arguing that it's not efficacious.
Yeah,
I
but the
think-
issue is there are examples of gun control that we can point to that are clearly efficacious.
I
So
don't agree
think,
with
and
that.
Alex wanted to say something, and then we could toss it over to
Well-
Sithis because Sithis wanted to say something.
Well,
but,
they, yeah,
if you're not
they've
done,
been
then
talking
go ahead.
forever. Like, I just basically got into this. So, like, can I go for a minute?
Oh, yeah, go. Absolutely, yeah. Go.
So, I mean, okay, so I think that your prior is false because it's not been shown that per capita gun ownership or the strength of gun laws as a whole is a statistically significant determining factor in violence levels.
Yeah, it has
This-
been. So,
Well,
the one that
Wait.
Oh, go ahead.
What? I mean, why are you laughing? First of all,
I'm laughing because your argument was bad.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, it was like the. It
Why
just
is
has
it?
been
I
shown.
mean,
Like,
how do
maybe
you
I
know
started
that?
because I sourced you the studies in the
You
like
mean
opening.
you sourced me studies, but like
Yeah, in the opening.
we can vote count or we can test methodology. Would you like to do that?
You can test the methodology if you want. Go ahead, check it
Okay.
out. Johnny Hewitt, all 2019. Open it up.
Well,
I already told you the issues of the vote count then, which is just that like you
Okay,
just
so
don't have
we-
more
okay,
studies
so
on
then
aggregate,
we-
and you
okay,
list
so
the
that's
studies that just
good.
take forever.
so we agree that vote counting is not going to be productive here.
Well, the issue is if you want to take a look at the aggregate number of studies that you think are going to be favoring either view, yeah, you can't do that by listing out studies in a debate. The methodology.
So, okay, so yeah, we agree then.
Listen.
So then
Is
we
to consult
agree.
this and listen.
Okay, let's
Is to consult a
let's
systemic review.
continue.
Is to consult a systemic review. The systemic reviews are going to lean towards us heavily. So I mean, if you have a systemic review that you think does the opposite, or a meta-analysis that does the opposite, feel free to drop it or tell me the name of it. I'll look it up myself.
Okay, well, I want everybody to actually understand the argument, so I'm not just going to drop the name. I'm also going to explain why it comes to that it does. So, fact is that typically when we look at studies of gun control and gun prevalence and violence, they do a number of things wrong. They fail to control for confounding variables. They don't properly establish casual order. And they don't use a proper measure of
Do you mean
gun
causal order?
prevalence. Excuse me?
Do you mean causal order?
Yeah, causal order. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this one does. The synthetic control study from Donahue does. The Shell study does. And so does the, I think it's Spielberg is the other study I mentioned. Let me read the name of it. Hold on. No, Siegel, sorry. All of those end up having those relevant controls and also show direction of causality.
How
Show as the
so?
causal direction. Yeah, because they use synthetic controls, right? So they can look at it before and after, and then you can look at temporal correlation as long as you're using synthetic controls properly. And then temporal correlation can show causation. If you're gonna like forward an argument like but it doesn't guarantee causation. Yeah, no evidence will ever guarantee anything because that's how evidence works, right? You have some non-zero or non-1 prior, right? So long as you have a non-zero or non-1 prior, no amount of evidence is ever going to update that to 1 or 0. That's just how base theorem works. So that forwarding an argument like that wouldn't really help you.
Can I jump in here?
No, wait. So, I mean, did you...
All right.
Right, so did they control for reverse causation?
Yes,
How so?
I just told you.
Okay, so they controlled for the possibility that because a correlation
Causal
does,
direction is inverted. Yeah, they
Well,
control
hold on
that,
a minute.
control for parallel
Hold on a
correlation.
minute. You have to let me speak, dude. So the correlation it doesn't necessarily go one way. It can go either way. It can be the case that a correlation is present because people are buying guns in response to crime because they're scared and they want to own guns to protect themselves, right?
Yep, that's why I just told you that doesn't apply to this study.
Okay.
You can take a look at when those things happen, right? In the case of what you just said, the thing that you're saying causes the other one happens before the other one.
I don't think that's the case, though.
It obviously would be the case. So if it's the case that you're saying, like, if an RTC law or something is passed, then right afterwards we see increases in violent crime, right? Then we know that it's not the case that violent crime caused the RTC law to get passed because the violent crime didn't happen before.
Okay, on the aggregate, studies that don't control for this don't agree with what you're saying.
Studies that don't control don't agree with. I don't know, but that would be relevant.
Studies that don't control for reverse causation don't agree with the hypothesis that you're putting forward.
I don't know why those would be relevant. The entire point is you have an issue with those studies.
Did you hear what I said?
Yes. Did you hear my response?
I said that studies that don't control for this don't come to the conclusion that support your view.
Studies that don't control for it are ones that you've said you have an issue with. Not controlling for temporal causation, temporal correlation, so that you can see where the direction of causality lies. Yes, that would be an issue. I agree with you that would be an issue, which is why I'm not citing those studies. I'm citing Donahue et al. I'm citing Siegel. I'm citing Shell. All of those do a methodology which controls for that. We should look at the ones that do control for it, not the ones that don't. Now, do you have a response? Yes or no?
I'm saying no. What I'm saying to you on the aggregate, the studies that actually control for all things I mentioned don't support the hypothesis that guns increase violence.
Yeah, Donahue
That's what I'm
does.
telling you.
Right. So why does Donahue et al.
I
not do
said
that?
I said on the aggregate.
Okay, well, I'm giving you a study that does. Right? Does this like now you're saying the ones that do control for it have this issue, or is it the ones that do control for it disagree, not the ones that don't? So now I'm just trying to.
That's not what I said.
Yeah, you did just say that.
No, I didn't.
You verbatim just said that. This is insane. Look, I'm
Okay,
gonna cite you
no, but okay,
have you
but
read any of the studies I'm mentioning? Are you just like
you're
kind of
taking-
guessing at a
you're-
methodology issue?
Wait. You're
you answer?
twisting the meaning of my words though.
Can you please answer my question?
I'm familiar with the authors,
Okay,
but I'm gonna
the
need
answer
you
is
to
no.
post this.
Then
Well, hold on a minute. First of all, change your tone. You're being an asshole. But Siegel, for example,
look,
can you
calling
post
me an
that?
asshole doesn't make your tone sound really polite. I don't care about the tone police. You just engage with the argument. You're embarrassing yourself.
Can you chill out a little bit?
Nobody's being
Guys,
mean to you. You just called me an
let's-
asshole.
let's,
I'm telling you, I'm not
No,
gonna change.
no.
Let's all be nice here.
You
Let's all
know
be
you
nice
are
here.
an asshole, and then you're telling me that I'm embarrassing.
Yeah, I just don't care.
Let's
I
keep
just
moving
don't give a fuck
forward.
if you think I'm being an asshole. Just
Let's-
give a fuck
No,
if
you are being an
Okay, guys.
asshole. You're just.
Okay.
Got
Move
Guys-
forward.
Nobody cares.
Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
I mean,
remember.
yeah. So Siegel
Yeah.
et al. Are you referring to 2019?
Yeah, Siegel et al. 2019.
Okay, so to confirm that we're talking about the same thing, can you post it?
That we're talking about the same thing. There's only
Yeah,
one
so
Siegel
just
et al.
post the
2019
link.
study that covers gun
Post the
control, so
link.
you'd have to be.
Yeah, I want to make sure that
Yeah,
we're
I
talking
got
about
you.
the same thing. Post the link.
Are you talking about the same thing? I don't think you've seen it, but here, I'll link it to you. There it is in the
I think
pop-up
I've
chat.
seen it. That's why I'm asking you to post the link. I think
I don't
that's
think you
very
have,
simple.
but there is in the pop-up chat. What's the issue with the methodology?
So, I mean,
There's none.
this
Okay.
it's showing you that so this is what I've seen. UBCs were associated with lower overall homicide rates, blah blah blah. They did it. This study, I don't believe that they actually found a relationship between the thing I mentioned and the other thing I mentioned. Like just aggregate
So what's your issue with the
per capita homicide with overall violence rates.
Yeah, we're not trying to correlate violence rates with overall homicide. What we're trying to do is control
That's
for
overall ownership,
Yeah.
not
Well,
doesn't
you
make
just did say
sense.
homicide. You misspoke, right? It's okay. Don't
I don't-
blame me for that, though. Look,
I
the
don't think
you did.
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Even
you don't have to think it,
even if
doesn't
I
matter.
even if I
Doesn't matter.
did,
Okay, let's relax.
I don't know why
relax.
you're up here trying to like humiliate people.
I don't know why you're being such a crybaby about this. Look, just engage with the argument.
A crybaby.
Just engage with the argument.
So now you're criticizing me for misspeaking, but you just misspoke yourself. But I don't get to criticize.
No,
you
a
for doing it.
cry-bully is not a misspeak. That's
Guys,
just a term that I use.
we get
Stop
it.
trying to-
Doesn't
Okay,
make
this
that's
is
just
so
a retarded
ignorant.
makeup.
This is such a
made
waste
up.
of time.
Can I make
This-
my point now?
Yeah, please do.
All
Thank
right,
God.
go ahead.
Okay,
Sophie,
so when you look at a lot of the gun crime within the United States, isn't a majority of them like gang on gang violence and things like that?
Yes.
Yes.
No, not a majority of gun deaths. If you want to look at majority of
Well-
gun crime, then yeah.
Well, that's what I said, gun crime.
Yeah.
Well, I would. Well, the thing is, if you look at a lot of these people who are committing gun crimes and shooting at each other, I would argue the main reason why they're doing that is so that they can sell drugs on these turfs. You know, there are a lot of gangs that are selling drugs on these turfs, and then they sort of fight with each other, and then over so that they can sell drugs on these turfs and make money off of it. So, if a large portion of the gun homicides and gun violence is coming from that, well, then my solution to that would be to legalize all drugs.
True.
Yeah, I don't think that solves the issue. So I do support like decriminalizing all drugs, but obviously you don't want to legalize all drugs. If the issue here is that like these drug producers are engaging in violence because of the fact that they oftentimes deal with a customer base, which is oftentimes on drugs, and an employee base, which is oftentimes on drugs, then yeah, of course it's going to be the case. You're going to have more violent crime. They're legalizing all drugs and making it the case they can produce it. That won't solve the issue. Decriminalization can certainly reduce it though, but it's not going to eliminate that entirely.
Yeah, but if you could go and buy a drug, the same drug that was prior to on the street in a store, obviously there's going to be less violence. If like you don't see people shooting each other up when they go into the store and they buy coffee or any other drug or tobacco or even legalized marijuana. I don't see why it would be all that different for all the other drugs.
legalized marijuana still has to compete with black market marijuana in the states where it's legalized.
Because of taxes and regulation.
Yes.
So get rid of the regulation and get rid of the taxes.
What that's going to do is just
Based-
make all of the drugs then act like black market drugs in terms of the way they interact.
Well,
with
the
world,
thing is,
right?
I don't think the government should restrict you from buying drugs or selling drugs. The thing is, what will end up happening is people, yeah, there would be some people on the streets still selling drugs, but the thing is, what most people, well, and in the beginning, you'll see people selling drugs on the street, but over time, these people on the streets simply cannot, would not be able to compete with these large pharmaceutical companies that have these economies of scale in which they can produce these drugs at such a large amount and, you know, driving down the price. So what you'll end up seeing is people going to regular stores to buy their drugs where they have labels and clear labels and things like that. And you wouldn't really see these gang members. They would have to go find something else to do.
Mm. Yeah,
real
economies
quick,
of
real
scale
quick,
can have a
real
benefit.
quick. Hold
Oh,
on,
yeah,
hold
sure.
on. Yeah, real quick. Let's try to move back to the guns. Fuck,
Okay.
man. Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
would say
Yeah,
I
sure.
didn't go on
Yeah.
a tangent,
I'm
but that,
to
I would
be-
argue.
This
To be
is-
fair to sit this right, like some of these like tangential issues are really relevant to the main issue. Like if you can make the argument that there's a better solution than gun control, then obviously that would be relevant. So we shouldn't
Yeah,
just cancel it out,
that's
we should
why I
respond.
brought it up. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the reason why I brought it up
If-
because if a large portion of the reason why people are shooting each other up on these streets. I mean, if most of the time when I hear people shooting each other up in the streets, it's usually like gang violence, or things like that. Or, you know, sometimes it's very rare when I hear like crimes of passion.
No, I get your reasoning. I wanted to respond to it really fast, right? So just to make one last point, right? In the case of the economies of scale, right? There's some advantage to having an economy of scale, but in the case of something like marijuana, which you can produce relatively easily, then the economy of scale ends up being like less of an advantage there because you like obviously you get some advantage from buying in bulk, but you get some disadvantages from needing to ship things from the bulk from these bulk facilities over to like the dispensaries, and that ends up like adding.
Yeah,
costs.
yeah.
So there's some ways in which costs are reduced by economies of scale. There's some ways in which they're added through economies of distribution. So both
I
of those
agree.
are being an issue there, right?
I agree. But what the thing is, as long as there's nothing restricting the production of more marijuana to meet the demand, what you'll end up seeing over time is the price going down because the demand of marijuana isn't going to simply go away. People are going to want to smoke marijuana. People are going to do heroin. So, you know, maybe in the beginning you'll start to see, you know, the price be around the same price as there's a black market. But as the supply starts to meet the demand, as more companies start to invest in it, you know, eventually, you know, things will become cheaper. It'll become cheaper like other drugs. And as long as there's no patent laws
That's not true. So we
to
have
restrict it.
Well, to
Yeah.
be super clear, no, it's in the real world we can already control out for the facts of like what is the increase in cost due to things like the regulatory red tape and things like taxes.
Yeah,
And if you
no
control them for these-
regulation.
No, I understand. You want no regulation, right? But you're not hearing the argument. I'm telling you that
Yes.
even if you account for the fact that those regulations add price, right? And you reduce the price of the price of these things to consumers accordingly, it's still the case that you have an overall more expensive product if you're buying like from a dispensary than if you're buying from like somebody who like grows in their house or something. There's just less overhead.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be illegal. But the thing is, there would be other things that would. Okay, so for instance, you can go and buy lettuce from any guy who owns a lettuce farm, and technically that would be cheaper. But the thing is, people are generally going to go to the not gas station, but to the grocery store to buy lettuce there because they understand that there is a sort of like a what you call it. There's an assurance of quality that it comes with that, you know. You know, there would be still some people who would buy marijuana on the street. I'm not disagreeing with that. But the thing is, when you allow for people to sell the drug, but also the main reason why drugs are expensive, I would argue, is because it's illegal. Because there's a restriction on the creation of that drug. There's a restriction on the supply. So when we get rid of those restrictions,
real quick. 2 minutes left. I think we're just gonna wrap it up soon because this keeps going away from the gun stuff.
Well,
It's annoying.
I can bring it back to
So
that.
if I can
Well,
wrap up my point,
to be realistic, like all of the topics of conversation that this is going to rely on from Synthesis arguments are going to be things that look a little bit tangential, but are definitely related. Like they're going to be things with the NAP thing. They're going to be things like, are there better alternatives, right? Those are, I think those are definitely relevant. And like, if we don't have the time to talk about that, it just makes it like impossible to have a conversation on gun control. Like granting Cythis the NAP, right? That would just mean that it would entail his view is correct. So we have to talk about that. We also have to talk about, is it the case there are alternatives that are better than gun control?
Oh, I agree with you. It's just most people in the audience, they're not going to understand that. I'm just doing this for the sake of the audience.
No, I get you. Yeah.
I understand that this is your place, this is your rules, of course. You don't, you know. I guess to wrap up my point is that like you know, a lot of people are talking about, oh, well, increasing guns increases crime, increases this, increasing crime. But the thing is, most of the people whom are using these weapons to shoot each other aren't law-abiding citizens. Most of them are operating within the legal market. And you have to ask the question, why are these people buying these guns and then using these guns to shoot other people? You know what I'm saying? And the main reason is because there is an extreme high cost and high profit in selling drugs because the government has put restrictions upon the sale and consumption of drugs. So what will end up happening is if we legalize drugs, is people and legalize a lot of the things like such as legalize gambling, legalizing all the like a lot of the black market things that these people sell, I think could easily be legalized, and then these people would have no choice but to move on to other ways of making money in the legal market.
Well, the issue is that
And
if
then
you're
we wouldn't need,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
well,
we
just a
wouldn't
moment,
have
just
a
a
need
moment.
for
I
all
wanna-
of
I
the.
wanna- I wanna
hold on,
talk
wait, hold
about-
on, wait, hold on,
Mhm.
real quick. I'll let Synth
That was my last
respond. Yeah, I'll let Synth respond, but then once Synth responds, we'll just move into the closing statements.
Well,
We'll move
I still wanted to add something, if
really-
that's okay.
Well, really quickly, like we can probably put that in the closing statements, and I guess you guys can go first if you'd like, so that you can put that in there. But cite this, right? Like one of the issues with this approach is that what you're
Cite
doing
this.
up. I'm sorry if your name is Six. This. The issue with the approach here is that if you go ahead and like legalize all drugs, what you've done is that you haven't caused some kind of erosion away of like these gangs that are driving their economies through driving those gang economies through the production of drugs. What you've done is just legalize the production of drugs. Now, I agree that we ought legalize drugs for like the aggregate of reasons. And it's like you could say that it even caused like a decrease in overall violent crime, which I'd agree with. The issue though is that like none of those are going to get you to there not being any violent crime or enough of a significant decrease, so that it's not still the case that gun control ends up being justified. So here's like a hypothetical that we can like sink our teeth into. Like imagine somebody is like they turns out they go to court, right? Because what they were doing was they pointed a gun in their wife's face, right? They were beating the shit out of her. They were going completely fucking crazy, right? Completely ape shit, and they shot their wife. Now let's say this person goes through their court case. They get found not guilty by reason of insanity. They spend a long time in a mental facility, and eventually the doctor lets them out. They say, "Look, you can live a normal life now, right? But there are some things you're gonna have to not do. Like for example, you'll have to not be able to purchase guns because clearly you have like these anger issues, this impulsivity, all these personality disorders, all of which make it really hard for you to control yourself if you have something that dangerous around. You're both a danger to yourself, right, through suicide, and to others, right? And in a case like this, right, should we be able to restrict that person from owning guns?
No.
Yeah. See,
And the reason why is because if you feel like that person is unreasonable to the point where he is unable to join society and do the things that other people within society are able to do, which is purchasing a weapon, well then maybe I would argue he probably should stay where he was at.
yeah, does that individual, given that they're only mentally ill, right? They haven't like actually broken any law. They got found not guilty by reason of insanity. Do you think that individual in that mental facility should be able to purchase a gun?
In that mental facility?
Yeah.
Well, no, and the reason why is because when you violate another person's rights, you get your rights taken away from you. So if you're being punished for a crime, that
He's
is
not.
when you.
The hypotheticals they were
Well,
found not guilty by reason of insanity, so they're not guilty.
well, the thing is, a person who is insanity is being held by another people because they're unable to live in the real world because they're insane. So you're restricting their rights to do pretty much anything. So it's not any different to restrict their gun right. You know what
Do
I'm
you
saying?
think it's okay to restrict a person's rights because of the fact that they're mentally ill, even if
Okay,
they're
yeah.
Well,
they've
if
done a crime?
they're
Say something.
if the thing is, you become mentally ill to a certain point where you're not basically a human at that point. You're unable to
Not a human.
um
Are you sure
well,
this
not
language
you're
was
still a
using?
human, but
Yeah.
I misspoke. What I'm trying to say is that like you're not thinking the same way as another. You're no different than say like an animal. You can't really think clearly. You're gonna go out and shoot somebody on your first sight. Well, then you have to treat that person differently than a normal person that is able to
So why
reason.
can't we look if a person's been found to be like that, right? Why isn't it the case like we can say like, look, it's good for you to be able to live your own life outside of the mental facility, but also you shouldn't be able to own a gun. Why can't we just have some kind of thing that's not so extreme? Why does the choice have to be either we have to keep them in a mental facility, a non-guilty person who doesn't need to be in a mental facility, or we have to like let them have every single normal
Because
thing that everybody else has?
the thing is, if you feel like that person is good enough to live out in society, that means you're granting him back his rights. And I would argue those rights is the only right that you have is private property rights to yourself and the things in which you own. So if you've done the time and you've done your crime and done the time, or in this case they've said that you're okay to be outside, well then they're granting you your rights back.
Well, look, I don't understand what's the case that you have to have like all of your
Wait.
what you're calling right granting. Why can't you
Since-
just like you go go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so
You're essentially getting your rights back.
well, here in the United States and California, which is notorious for their gun control laws, like we do give your rights back once you show that one, you're not a danger to yourself or others. I think the concern here is that if someone is dealing with mental health issues, and then you do release them outside of like a mental health sort of like adjudication, yes, there is a time limit on like when they can purchase guns, and I think here in California it's 5 years. I definitely think that like if you've gotten those sort of like adjudications at least more than a few times, you have shown on multiple occasions that you are a danger to yourself or others. I do think that those rights should be restricted because one, you're either going to kill yourself or you're going to kill another person, or at least at least harm someone. And not to say not to say that this is the majority of the time, but
I understand your view. I
Okay.
understand you guys' view. But the thing is, I believe very strongly in the NAP. I believe in property rights, And if we are going to take away people's rights, and then when they do the crime, they do the time. In this case, well, you know what I'm trying to say. Then you can't just give them partially their rights back. You know what I'm saying? You got to give them their rights back because of you can't just have some citizens with rights or not rights simply because person might be mentally ill or this person might not be mentally ill. Is being mentally ill a full justification to restrict somebody from buying from doing what they want with their own private property? That's a hard question to answer. But the thing is, I would probably lean in the no. I would lean in the no. Like if you feel if the person is being left the people who are in charge of that person feel that they are good enough to be let go, well then that they should have their rights back.
and I definitely agree with you. I don't think the Second Amendment is a second class right. I think it deserves the full respect of all other constitutions do.
Yeah.
But my issue is, and also this goes into the NAP as well. Say a business, they don't want to have guns in their business. Would you be okay with that business saying, due to our property
yes.
rights? Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yes.
So you'd be okay with like,
so
sensitive.
in Ancapistan, there would be company states, and then those companies, like there would be a large company city, right? And then in that company city, if that company city says, hey, in order to come onto our private property, you have to relinquish your weapons before coming into this company city. I would argue that that person is completely within their right to restrict you from bringing a weapon within that company city's private property. Because in the end of the day, they're not destroying your private property rights because you could be like, hey, I don't want to be here. I could go on my own private property.
Yeah. And I'm guessing I take it that you're okay with gun control as long as it's by private corporations, right?
The thing is, private corporations can't force you to they can't force you not to use a weapon. All they could do is be like, hey, if you want to buy our stuff or you want to go onto our private property, you can't bring a weapon. And they're within their right to do that because it's their private property.
Yeah. So what happens if like I'm selling a house to someone and I hold all the rights to that house because I'm technically the property owner. Actually, I shouldn't say sell the house, rent the house or apartment. Should I, therefore say
if there's a stipulation before the lease is signed that says you can't have a weapon within this house and the person fully agrees and reads it, and understands it, then yeah, you have the right to do that because it's your private property. See, renting is allowing another person.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, like here in the United States, the courts have actually blocked apartment complexes and like sort of these management companies from like doing that. So that's even more extreme.
No, I would disagree with that. Because it's not their private property, yes. It's not their private property. At the end of the day, I think that you have the right to include and exclude people or anything from your private property for any reason that you want.
Okay. So just to engage with like the Ancapistan argument, like say that you need insurance to just live your life in this sort of society, which I'm assuming that like insurance is pretty big in an Ancapistan society. What happens if the insurance company says, we want to restrict all sorts of firearm, sort of ownership, and that you can't get our insurance that is necessary for you to be able to live in this society. I mean, that seems very extreme, but you would allow it just because it's a private corporation.
Well, the thing is, you don't have to live there. I mean, if you're on your own private property, they can't tell you not to. They can't tell you can't own a weapon if you're on your own private property. But let's say they say, hey, I don't see why they would do this, but because a protection agency would obviously be not give a shit about whether or not you own a weapon. But let's say in your hypothetical there is a stipulation that says, hey, if you want our contract, you got to relinquish your weapon, and as long as the person is agreeing to that stipulation, then that's okay. But if the person disagrees with it, well, then I would argue that if a lot of people would disagree with that, and they would lose money. But
Okay.
it is what it is.
Okay, so just to move away from the ANCAP stuff, here in the United States, we do have a gun violence issue, and I do think that there should be some regulations put in place. Yes, we have corporations that say if you're going to come onto our establishment, you can't have guns. Yes, there are schools that are publicly owned that say that you cannot bring guns onto schools, but it seems like your differentiation between what is okay and what isn't okay is that it's a private corporation versus the sort of the government doing it. With respect to
Well,
like
the thing
private,
is, the difference between a private and a public is a public can force you not to wear a weapon in your own private property, whereas a corporation can only restrict you from bringing your weapon onto their private property.
but it's the same way with schools. Like schools can't force you to not have guns in your own home, but you can't just bring a gun onto school, right?
Well,
Like
the thing
my
is,
university,
if the
wait, wait,
government,
wait,
Wait, hold on.
I
Let
just- I'm
Alex
sorry,
finish.
sorry.
yeah, I know you're excited, but I do want to get this point out just real quickly.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't mean
like
to.
like for example, like my university, they don't allow us to bring guns to school, and I totally respect that, but they're not blocking me from owning guns at my home. If we had those sorts of laws, I mean, it seems like that would be fine, but I think your differentiation on what's good and what's bad is based on, whether or
Whether or
not
not it
it's a
violates
private
the NAP.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
whether or
private
not it violates
corporation.
the NAP. Because the
Okay.
thing is, if you're on a college campus, that college campus, I assume, is owned by a
The
group of
state.
individuals or a person or the state or whatever. And if the people who own that, I mean, if I'm going to give that the state could own anything, I obviously don't agree with that, but I'm just going to give it to you under this current system. If the state owns that system, that's thing, and they decide that you're not allowed to own a weapon, that on that sting, then that's not necessarily violating your property. Well, I would say it is, but under your system, it wouldn't be because you're still technically allowed to own a weapon. But the thing is, to me, I don't think that the government can own anything because the government isn't really a person. I only believe that people can own things.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes.
I guess I'm having issue with like where you're coming from just because of the whole ANCAP stuff. I know you say that the government could, they're not necessarily, the same as a private corporation, but when you talk about private corporations in your sort of Ancapistan society, it sounds like they're definitely the de facto government. And
Well, the thing is,
they could do their own gun control. Like they could stop people from owning guns in their own home if they stipulate it. They can stop people from bringing guns into their business, which by the way is a current topic. Like a lot of
actually,
legislators.
I didn't say that. The one thing, if I could correct you,
Okay,
I
yeah,
didn't say that a company can restrict you from owning a weapon within your own home. They could only do that if they own your home. But if you own your own home, then you're allowed to bring any weapon you want on that property.
gotcha. Thank you.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
put words in your mouth. My bad.
Yes.
Yeah. So I I mean, it's the same here in the
yeah.
It's the same here in the United States, and I really want to move away from the sort of ANCAP stuff, and just sort of focus on what's currently going on within the United States.
If I can make one point, Ancapistan isn't a utopia in which we're trying to break down the system and then rebuild it using some idealistic ideology, like Marxism or anything like that. All we're doing is looking at conflicts, right? Disputes between private property. We look in the real world in which ways in which people deal with these disputes over private property, and then we try to apply that across the board and create a system in which we have the least amount of force. Then that's basically the ideology. So so it isn't dissimilar. Our government, no, not government, our company state would not be that much dissimilar to the government. The only thing is you can completely opt out of it and then live on your own private property and then choose to defend yourself.
One
So
more
it's like,
minute.
it's all
Hold on.
that's the idea.
Yeah, one more minute, then we're gonna go into closing statements.
Cynthia, you want to respond to that or Quach? I know Quach hasn't really said anything.
Bro, I don't know any of this is relevant, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
so, yeah, if you
ahead.
don't know the relevant, I'm down to respond to it, right? So, like, I do see the relevance, and Synthesis' point. So, yeah, I understand that, like, at the end of the day, without attacking, like, the NAP directly or something, there's not going to be, like, progress here. So, obviously, the NAP has, like, reductives. A lot of people are going to find unintuitive. What kind of ways do you go about checking whether or not a normative theory is true or not? Synthesis? Do you do it based on reductive? Do you do it based on some other methodology? How do you pick your ethic? I'm asking, how do you pick your ethic?
Well, because I agree with it.
Yeah, well, is it just based on what you feel is correct? That's
Well,
all.
the thing is, right? This is how I look at it, right?
Mhm.
If you're on an island, Synth, and there's no government that doesn't control over the island, and you basically snap a stick and you turn it into a spear. Is that your stick?
You're doing the thing where it's like you're saying you have ownership of something if you mix your land with the labor. You like ground out property, right?
Yeah, so I would argue that the first person to a good is the person who owns that good. I would argue that people own themselves. I agree with that wholeheartedly, that I believe that I own myself. I don't believe that anybody owns me at all. And that means that I have the right to say and do and put whatever I want in my body, do whatever I want with my body, as long as I'm not violating the property rights of another individual.
Yeah, that's
And
the
I believe
view.
that
I'm
very
asking how do
strongly.
you figure out. Yeah, that's the view, right? That's the thing you believe, right?
Yes.
I'm not asking you, do you believe it? I'm asking you, in fact, how do you pick if you believe it or not? Is it just based on if you
Well,
like
because
it or
I
not?
agree with it.
So it's just based on like a preference.
Well, yeah. Isn't that how we all do it?
Okay. Well, no, I'm a moral realist, but if you're like a moral anti-realist, we can engage on those grounds, right? So
I don't
your
know what that
preference is. Well, it sounds like you're actually. I'm a moral realist in that I think that like morals are objective facts, not matters of preference. But we can engage on like, the grounds of it being a preference.
I mean, I guess I believe that a subjective.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine with granting the metaphysical view. I don't think we have to get into that. I just want to like explain to you why it's the case that your methodology is actually being contradicted by the things you said earlier, right? So you said it's the case like, well, I don't think they should do it in the case of the dog rape thing. You'd actually prefer people not rape dogs, right? You prefer they use some like type of reasoning where dog rape would never dog rape is something they wouldn't do. They would never choose to do that.
Yeah, so this like I guess the point that I was making was that there's like a difference between what I think is morally wrong and what I think should be illegal.
Yeah, exactly. But the things you're saying should be legal. How do you pick what should be legal?
Whether or not it violates the NAP of another individual.
Yeah, and you pick the NAP as your ethical view, right? And you pick that view based on whether or not you prefer that the NAP be followed, but you don't prefer the NAP be followed in some scenario.
I do.
Do you prefer the really you prefer the person like so in the case of the NAP, there's like no ethical wrongness in the case of like, doing something that doesn't violate the NAP, correct?
Well, I could like you can have an opinion on things, right? But there's a difference between having an opinion on something and then thinking whether or not something should be illegal.
Well, in the case of what you just described, should is mean there wouldn't be, right? All it means to say something should be legal to you is just that you prefer it be legal.
Well, I don't think it should be illegal.
Yeah, so you don't prefer it be legal, you're saying.
I said I don't think it should be illegal.
Which just means
60
the same
seconds
thing as
left.
you don't prefer it.
The timer's on 60 seconds
I
left.
mean, what?
That just
I
means
said
the
I
same
don't think
thing
it
as to
should
say
be-
you don't. Yeah, that's just the same thing as to say you prefer it not be illegal, right?
Well, if you understand what I mean, then I guess yes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but the issue is you actually do prefer, right? That it's the case that people not rape dogs, and also that people be prevented from raping dogs.
No, I never said that at all.
You don't prefer people be prevented from raping dogs?
No.
Okay, like so the.
Why would I stop somebody from raping their dog? I mean, I may not. I may tell them. I may tell them. Hold on.
Oh my God.
Funny
If I
phrasing,
tell
funny
somebody,
Wait,
if I could tell somebody, hey, hold
inside
on.
voice.
I could tell somebody, hey, don't do that, right? But and hey, I don't think that's fucked up, or I won't be your friend if you do that, right? But who am I to tell him what to do with his private property? He can rape it all he wants.
Well, you can have preference about other people doing things with their private property, right?
Yeah, I told you that already. I said I have an opinion on it, but that doesn't mean I should stop him.
Yeah, look, if you have an opinion, right, that it not be the case this happened, right, obviously that would be fulfilled by somebody preventing it from happening, right?
All right, the timer's off. The timer's off.
Damn.
All right, yeah, we're gonna have to move into closing statements.
Not necessarily. That was
Okay.
my last word.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of horny today.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Closing statements. Nexus. You guys go first in your closing statements. 7 minutes. Yeah. Go for it.
Me?
I've got nothing to say.
Okay.
You're all good.
Okay, so and my closing statements is these guys brought up a whole lot of statistics about, oh my god, like if we have allowed people to own guns, oh my god, the gun crime is going to go up. But then, I kind of like, smack that down, because most of the gun crime, when you look at most of the gun crimes, it's usually due to government basically restricting certain practices, and because of that, it creates large black markets. And we would argue, of course, that the majority of the crime comes, and the gun shooting is coming from those black markets. So obviously the solution to that would be to legalize those black markets and make them no longer black markets anymore. And that would obviously be the solution. So in the end of the day, there are absolute plenty of ways in order to stop people from shooting each other that doesn't require the government coming in and restricting people's property rights in the end of the day. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. The NAP is true. I believe that you own yourself and you own the things that you own, and legalize all guns.
Anybody else
Vlad.
in the Nexus team?
I mean, if you want me to go, I'll go.
You don't have to.
I mean, yeah, I mean, basically, like I said before, you have to establish your priors, and in general, the studies that support no relationship, no causal relationship, tend to be of higher quality than those that don't. That's basically my entire argument. And that study that he cited, Siegel, I mean, even that one found no relationship between armed households and killing, with the full range of control variables included. That was in Table 3. Basically, that's it. And also the whole right to carry thing, I mean, that just doesn't follow, because concealed carriers aren't more violent than the general population. They're actually less. It's based on state data. That's all.
How much time we got left?
You guys have 5 minutes left for your closing statements.
Okay, so I would say legalize all tanks, legalize all drugs, legalize all guns, legalize gambling, get rid of the FDA, get rid of all these stupid restrictions, and you will see the black market go down. You would see all these crimes being committed go down. And what end up happening is the only crimes that you'll see people using guns for is maybe like crimes of passion, which happen very rarely. And we don't really need to necessarily restrict people's rights in order to stop people from doing those sorts of things. So, I feel like a lot of these people's arguments don't really hold up. And that's it. Legalize all guns, drugs, and prostitution as well, too.
Apparently, animal rape as well.
Okay, let's close. Yeah, what? Yeah. Okay,
Animal can't not consent, so it's technically not
okay.
rape, right?
All right.
Same with
Yeah.
babies.
So, anyone left for Nexus that want to add in their closing statements or no? Because you guys still have 4 minutes left. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. Okay. Atlas, you guys can give your closing statements. 7 minutes.
Before we give our closing statements, just for the audience's sake, can Sci-Hub define what the word priors means? Because I've been using it in a wildly different way than Sci-Hub. Just so we understand what you meant with your priors argument.
Just prior conditions that allow us to come to that.
Okay, I mean, if that's the definition you're going to get with the word priors in the definition. Look, so the process of setting a prior probability, use this to, like, the way you want to do this is based on intrinsic probability. So you do a couple of different things. One, you take your credence in it, right? Obviously, in the case of a debate, you probably want to discount the credence. The other things you can take into account intrinsic probability or theoretical virtues. So, for example, parsimony, a theory being simpler, or something that gives a higher prior probability for you to consult evidence. Priors are just whatever your credence is in some particular hypothesis being true before consulting any evidence. Like, what should your credence be? That's the prior.
Seth, I'm confused. Is this your closing statement?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
So, like, the other side forwarded, like, mostly during this course of the discussion, there weren't really like super strong arguments forwarded. The idea that there's some kind of correlation of concealed carriers being on average less violent, therefore it's the case that concealed carry doesn't cause over a higher rate. Well, those individuals didn't have guns; they'd be even less violent than that. So, saying those the individuals who buy the concealed carry firearm are on average less violent would be irrelevant. So if it's the case that individuals who are like getting the guns like stolen from them end up having like an increase in violent crime, still the same issue. Doesn't really matter if it's the case there's a correlation, because what we care about is causation. Now, overall, throughout the course of the discussion, I have to say I appreciate Sithis for being able to clearly and directly bite bullets when they're entailed by his position, not just like beat around them. I do appreciate that. I appreciate him for coming out here and like making the arguments on the other side's view. And I know that there's a lot of audience members who might be kind of frustrated with that, but the unfortunate fact of the matter is that when Sithis is making like an argument that might be in favor of your position, even if you don't like the argument Sithis is making, right, other people are going to come at this from different lenses. Sithis comes at it from like an ANCAP lens, which just means that like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of ANCAP talk. So, I'm sorry for the audience members who didn't like that very much, but it's like I don't think it's the case you can blame Sithis for that. It's just like a matter of like if you have a position, right, you got to get the argument that convinces you, not the argument that like just like you feel like giving or something, or that you want to please the audience with. So it's super fair that Sith has approached the conversation that way, and I really appreciate him for like being willing to. But yeah, overall, I think that if you start your assumption out with the NAP, like an absurd premise gets you to absurd conclusions. So there's not really much you can do about that. If you pick your if you're trying to pick your ethical view based on what you prefer, the vast majority of people are not going to prefer the NAP, and so they'll pick the ethical view based on what they prefer, which is not the NAP. So that's the end of like my portion of it. I'm not sure if I know that Inelex and Quite you guys probably both want to add something on there.
I don't really want to add anything. I think you hit the hammer, man. Sorry, the nail.
Okay, what about Quite?
All I can say is I perfectly agree with King Sithis. You know, underwater sponges are, you know, underwater flashlights. Coral is just an underwater dildo, and legalize nuclear bombs.
I'm glad that you guys are really good faith, and not saying this on whatever, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You guys were pretty good faith, and especially you, Synth. You know, I feel like you guys were pretty good. I mean, in a little bit in the beginning, you were a little hard on me, but you know, I felt like we were pretty
good,
cool
man.
at the end. So, you know, obviously I have a different viewpoint from everybody else, and I justify things differently. So, you know, you guys may look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm not inconsistent.
All right,
That's-
alrighty. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you guys for the questions. Now we're gonna open the floor up to the audience Q&A. But we already have someone from the audience already here, which has been.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Oh, okay. We
Oh,
have
alright.
okay,
Hello,
incarnation.
hello,
All right, hold on. All right, hold on. Fuck, man. All right. Since Midnight Dancer was here first, you can ask your question first, and then incarnation. Okay.
I gotta get going. It was nice debating all.
No, you don't. Okay, fine. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Alright.
I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
All right.
I
take care.
know that we like to talk about, you know, when we're in these debates about statistics and on these studies. But one thing that we always lack with the gun debate is the why. Why in the United States do we have the gun rights we do? And personally, and from what I've read historically, it's to protect the rights from the states from the federal government. That plain and simple. If you don't like the structure of the United States, and the idea that the republics are their own individual bodies of government, um, then that's something we can argue about. But the legality of it is not necessarily that it's the right to self-defense or the right to protect one's property. It's the right to protect one's state sovereignty and the rights that the states have. Um, I want to understand why. No, my question is going to lead to this. So why do you think that inputting gun control and giving more power to the federal government when it comes to the states' rights to protect themselves outweighs the very percentage few deaths that are actually attributed to gun violence?
Can I
Yeah,
talk?
this question's for me or Quite?
It's for Sin.
Our side. Okay, perfect. Thanks. Like, so the
Fuck
reason
you.
why I don't, it's sorry, Quite. I'll throw it over to you right afterwards so you can get your response as well.
Mm.
Yeah, so we have like a large portion of we have a large set of data that shows that it's the case. Like, if you correlate things like Freedom House scores with rates of gun ownership in country, the correlation is like nearly non-existent. I'll go ahead and post the graph for that so you can see with your own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. We also have a large plurality of other studies. One interesting one is revolutions are actually more likely to happen in a nation, right? You're actually more likely to have an armed rebellion in a nation where gun ownership is lower on average per capita, which is actually kind of funny as well. So the idea that guns drive up freedom doesn't seem to be supported by the data. If you have any kind of data that you think shows like some causal support, right, some kind of a causal link that this is accounting for, I'd love to see it, but I've yet to see any of that yet.
Well, okay, so I'm not really worried about like the individual gun ownership, but the state's rights to determine their own rights when it comes to the how they arm their populace, right? Whether it's through regulated militias like state national guards, or if it's like things like Just your private sheriff or like security agencies, right? They have the right to regulate those. Do you think that there should be harsher regulations on those organizations as well?
It depends on the organization. I don't think broadly it's the case that we shouldn't have any guns or anything. I think that the ideal gun policy is one that specifically targets handguns and leaves rifles, so that you can have the good parts of this without having the bad parts. But obviously, if your revolutionary force is all like be killing themselves with firearms, you're never gonna have your like revolution. So it's pointless to have these guns if the point is for freedom.
Yeah,
'cause
because
dead
the
people
reason
have
why I
no
ask
freedom.
like the why is because I want to know why you're coming to this point of view. I really could care less about. I want to know why you come to that conclusion. Thank you for clearing up how you came to that.
Oh, good.
All right. Thank you for that question.
Quite
Vanessa.
have something to say too, right?
Oh crap! Well, then dude left.
I-
Wait, did you have anything
I-
to say? Yeah, you can still answer.
I,
if you want.
I think you covered it basically on the. I was just gonna bring up the nuke thing. How there's a point in time where like, the deaths caused by private ownership sort of supersede the practicality of allowing for that freedom to exist. There is like, there's like a problem, obviously, with not being able to defend yourself against the state. But the state, as long as the state owns nuclear weapons, which the state needs in order to defend itself against other states, that can't be realistically gotten rid of. Then you're going to need private ownership of nuclear weapons by that law, and suddenly mass shootings, like 15-year-olds who can shoot up schools and cause like 20 people to die, is going to cause New York City to be blown up or Boston to be blown up. I think some people say like nuclear weapons are too expensive right now, but it's the same thing as before, where you have to extrapolate the principle farther into the future. And if nuclear weapons are going to inevitably in the future become cheaper, have a smaller figure form, just like how guns have evolved technologically, then you're going to need to apply that principle for the future as well. And then eventually it is going to collapse if you do have the same people who talk about making sure that AK-47s or whatever are legal and accessible and whatnot, have that apply to nuclear weapons, right? That's
Can I
it.
say something?
Okay. Okay.
Sure.
Can I?
Sure, real
I
quick, but
think
we
the
will
fact.
have to get to Incarnation's question. But yeah, real quick.
Yeah, I
yes,
promise
something.
I'll go. It's really quick. I think the fact that you even have to put a stipulation in your in your what do they call it, constitution, saying that you need weapons in order to defend yourself from the government just shows that your system is completely flawed.
All right, next questioner. We got Incarnation 613. What's your question, man?
All right. So I think we could objectively say that the United States does have a level of regulation, and I know that the severity of that regulation will oftentimes depend on the state. However, we can categorically say that the United States does have a form of regulation. So I think the question that I have to people who advocate for gun control, right? Given the context of the United States, and yes, you could reasonably argue gun control works everywhere else in the world, yes, and that's a fair point to have. However, in the United States, you have a unique variable in which you have an absurd amount of guns that are already within the United States. So other than having the entire country coming in and having doing a gun buyback program, which I mean they already have, but the collective of the society coming together and bringing back guns, how would regulations actually help towards minimizing gun violence if it's really not being acted upon from a societal standpoint?
Yeah, so the ways in which regulation can minimize gun violence is when we're passing policy on like a state by state level. It's pretty easy to do things that we already know have a really strong empirical support for being able to decrease overall gun violence, and also have really strong theoretical support. So, for example, gun laws that like universal background checks, right, or something that's like already widely supported. It's pretty popular. That makes it easy to pass, and that kind of thing can obviously reduce overall gun crime because it can stop people who are criminals from having guns. That's the kind of thing that Sith is going to reject because it puts the onus on like somebody who's like a law-abiding citizen, the creator, or sorry, not the creator, person selling the gun, to do that background check. But for me, this is like a worthwhile trade-off. But like in the case of like other kind of like policies we can pass, like what another policy that I think is like kind of like my pie in the sky policy that I really love is to have a trade-in policy for small caliber handguns to be traded in for small caliber rifles. Obviously, just due to concealability, handguns end up being the kind of thing which are far more likely to be used in crime, even if you control for the amount of guns, which are handguns versus rifles. So some kind of like any kind of policy that you want to actually reduce gun deaths with should be specifically targeting handguns.
Can I say something?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead. Real quick though. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that the main reason why people are shooting each other and having these violent altercations is because of black markets that are created by government restrictions on the sale and consumptions of goods and services. So a lot of these people's they look at this problem, and as opposed to getting rid of these government restrictions, they think, okay, well, actually, it would be better off for us to have more government restrictions on our rights in order to solve this issue. And I think that it's a kind of a backwards thinking way of thinking.
Alrighty. Thank you for your question. Thanks for the answers. Kevin Chapman, so glad for you to join us. Ask your question, bro.
My question is for Cynthia, I think. The one with
What's up?
the pop as a profile picture. Oh yeah. Well, my only question was, why do you talk so fast?
I'm just too quick.
Nice.
Was that towards him or
Nice
me?
day, y'all.
Me.
Yeah, that was towards Synth, the question. Okay.
Yeah.
That was it, Kevin? Or you good? Or you want to ask more,
Yeah,
more personal questions? Or what's up, man?
No, I just had that question.
Okay. Fuck.
Oh,
man.
yeah, protect all dogs.
Oh, okay. All right, we get it. Okay.
Protect all dogs.
My friend I like T has a question.
Yep, I like tea. Oh, and we're going. Yeah, what is your question, sir? Conclusions?
Conclusion?
I got you, bro.
So I've got a plurality of sources saved locally that I like to use. But if you want one that I actually think it includes all the ones that I mentioned, unless I'm misremembering. One that I think is actually really good to check out if you want to like ever like do research on the pro gun control side is to check out I think this guy named Socialism Done Left, who's a friend of mine, has this thing called the Stinky Right Winger Fact Sheet, which is a dorky ass cringy name, but it's got a gun control section that's pretty good. I'll link it to you if you want. Gotcha. There you go, linked it. It's in your DMs. Okay, man. Peace.
All right. Sam is next up. Samuel. Sam with the hearts in his name. You can come on up. All right. What is
Hello.
your... Oh, it's an Negro. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
It
What is your
I
question?
am a woman, yes. My question actually is for Sithis. Yes, you. It's actually a hypothetical. It's an Ancapistan hypothetical. I wanted to see how you'd answer it. So imagine like there's this black family living in a house in like the middle of nowhere, and like the only grocery store around for like, let's say like 100 miles, like it's like literally in the middle of nowhere. They don't allow black people to go in there. But if they don't get food, they'll die. Would you think it's like okay to like violate the like grocery store owners' rights for them to go get food?
No, it would not be okay for you to violate their rights. No.
Okay. I just
But I would
wanted to
argue in Ancapistan something would not happen like that because, the thing is discriminating. If I could give a short answer, when companies discriminate against a portion of their the people who consume their goods and services for arbitrary, dumb reasons such as race, I would argue a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people around that disagree with that. A lot of people would refuse to basically go to that store, thus creating, well, and also the black people who are being excluded from that store. So they're basically cutting off a very large portion of the people who would be buying from their goods and services simply because of some dumb arbitrary reason, thus making it so that another company could come in and actually cater to those people and actually make the profits that those people are refusing to get.
Yeah, I agree. It would probably be disincentivized, but
Yep.
I just wanted to see.
You have
your
the right
response.
to, but yes, you have the right to discriminate against anybody on your property for any reason.
Can I add
Even if
something
I
to that?
disagree
I
with
want to
it.
like respond to the things that this said.
Mhm.
Yeah, look, well, I think there's this issue of thinking that just because something will only appeal to a niche group, that it's not the case that it'll be able to like have market viability. Plenty of things can appeal to very specific niche groups, like racists, for example, and still survive in the market because the racists will pick them over all the other people. If a person doesn't want to go to a store with a bunch of black people in it because they're fucking racist, they'll go to the store with the racist rule. And so it's still the case these
Yeah.
stores can, like survive in the market, and thus that
Yeah.
it will happen in Kapistan.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying it will never happen. I'm just saying that the people whom are discriminating against who are discriminating are putting themselves at a disadvantage in the market, thus allowing another person to be able to come in and fill in that demand in which they refuse to meet.
Well, they can fill in the demand they refuse to meet, but in some locations, it's the case they wouldn't be able to survive as a business. So if you have a location where you have like a really strong racist community and like a small handful of black people, the amount of demand in that area for non-racist products will not be nearly as high as the demand for racist products. So you'll be outcompeted in the market. You just won't be able to afford it. So like
Well,
this
the
is the
thing
reason we
is
have
that,
like
but
food deserts.
but even if that
we
was
can't go
true,
into another debate. We can't go
I could
into
just focus on
another
the
debate.
thing. Yeah. If I one last
Hey,
sentence,
Sithis, can I
even
throw an olive branch out real quick? I'm
Yeah,
down
yeah,
actually
go
if you want I'm down to actually schedule like a more full-fledged like NAP focused debate. If you want to like send me a DM
Yes,
on that.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, my friend. I think you're pretty cool. And
Yeah,
but
we
if
can
I were to
host it
say
here.
my one last statement was that even if what you were saying was true, I would not grant you that that gives anybody the right to encroach upon your private property.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that would be the NAP argument. Yeah.
All right. So last questioner is Midnight Answer, even though they already came up. I guess they want to ask another question. Sheesh. Okay. Yeah, you feel free to come on up, man.
I'm just
Midnight
bored and I have
Dancer.
a captive audience.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
So last question, and we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
All right. So this is for King Sithis. I used to be an ANCAP. I have migrated more into the Georges Thomas Paine era region of libertarianism over the years as I've gotten older. But what was the thing that made you become an ANCAP?
I was more like you. I was very minarchist, I guess you could say. But the thing was, the only reason why I didn't really support in Kapistan was because I didn't really know how it would work or ways in which we could replace the government functions. And as I started to read more into it, and I found that, there are many examples within the private market in which all of these things in which we do that the government does can be replaced by and do in a more efficient way. So, as a libertarian, I feel like I'm forced to go that route when I see that there is a possible way. It was more
So
to me that
you're
figuring
you're
out how to
more
do it.
so you're more of the Rothbardian school of thought,
Yes.
the more class like what is now Mises.
Austrian school. Hmm.
Mises. No, it's not Austrian. It's
Yeah,
Misesism.
no.
It's all
Yeah, whatever.
Misesism.
Whatever you want to call it. I believe in the NAP. I believe in the natural law, and all that, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but yeah. So I hope you outgrow this phase. We all do, but
Okay.
government is a necessary evil, and because there are always going to be people who have bad intentions, and those people with bad intentions will always find ways to enact those bad intentions.
Well, can I extend a olive branch to you?
Hmm.
Let's say we create your minarchist state, and the United States basically becomes a minarchist state. Do you think it would be completely outrageous to allow for mini and Kapistan government, no government areas in which people can choose to have the things in which an Ancapistan
I wouldn't
would
say I'm
have?
a minarchist. I'm a definitely a hardened Republican when it comes to the idea of like federalism. So I would say that your state should determine a lot of what goes on because they know their people the best, and you vote
Well,
for
I
your
mean, even with
representatives. And
your
like,
current example, like, would you think it would be really all that ridiculous to
if
voluntarily
Vermont,
allow?
if Vermont wanted to become Ancapistan again, yes, if they voted for it, they could do it.
All right, based.
Hmm.
Alrighty, yeah. I think that's all there's to it. Thank you for everyone that listened. Thank you to the debaters. Shout out to Synth primarily because they joined in at in the last moment they filled in someone's spot. So thank you, Synth, for that. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you to everyone. I'll
Can I
now
shout myself
close.
out?
Oh, you already did that in the beginning, man.
Oh.
All right. Yeah. All right.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
everyone. All right. Goodbye.